And I'm going to be working on a 3/4 view again. Like I said last week, the 3/4 view, when you're drawing a character initially, is usually the best view to draw the character from, because it states quite easily what the full dimensions of the character are. If you do a straight-on front view, which, like I said last week, try and avoid, and a straight-on front side view, try to avoid as well, it adds dimension to the character. The other ones flatten the character out. If we were to, since we were just watching a Tex Avery cartoon, we can sort of build on this basic shape here, the same head as the wolf has. I'm just going to be guessing at this because I can't remember completely what his face looked like, so I'll be doing a bit of a mutation on him. I'm going to extend the nose out with this type of a shape here, out in the front. Now, remember what we were talking about last week, and actually all through this entire course. We've been discussing the idea that as we're drawing, we're not thinking of this line that we're placing down here as a two-dimensional line with height and width. We're thinking of it more in terms as being a sculpture, which has 3 dimensions to it. So as we're drawing this, I've got the single line that comes up and around like this and hooks in there, but I'm thinking as if it's got a contour line that is going to cut down here in a 3/4 view and bisect this face down like this. And it's going to come around the bottom here, and if we were to draw the invisible dotted line that would split that, that would then connect up into there. And then the same thing on the top part, since if we have our horizon line somewhere around here, we're not going to be able to see the top of that nose. This invisible line would come down here and then hook in with that one, and then it connects into the center line on the face. So it helps us to understand that we're dealing with a 3-dimensional form. If I was to treat this like it was plasticine and draw it like it was plasticine, so I'm just taking and shoving the end of the nose right onto the face, then the shape as it touches the head would come around like this, being a cylindrical form. Now, this is just as it would be as if it was flat. Of course, it would have to wrap around because the contour on the head coming around this way, the ellipse is curving like this. So therefore the shape that's coming down here is going to resemble a little bit of a saddle. It'll be rounded here. As it comes around the top here, it's going to flatten out and then wrap back and around the other side there. Now we can extend this out by adding on an extra layer of plasticine onto the back side, because right now we just have the snout of the character's face. If we draw that form back into the back of the head here, we can then create the cheek area. By extending this back here, like this, we're creating the cheek on the character's face. Now at this point, the other thing we should be keeping in mind is the fact that because we're dealing in a 3-dimensional shape and we've got these cross contours on here saying that it is 3-dimensional, this is where the application of the stuff that we're dealing with right now in your drawing for animation course is going to kick in. We're treating this character 3-dimensionally, so therefore there's an imaginary box around the character right now. So if we're drawing this side of the face over here, we also have to consider that there's going to be a cheek on the opposite side over here, like that. Now we're not going to see as much of it. Actually, we won't see any of it because it's blocked off by the nose. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't draw it in for the sake of reference. Because later on, if you're going to move this character around and rotate the character 3-dimensionally in space, we have to know where this cheek is. Okay? So that's the reasoning behind the box theory and all the perspective stuff that we're doing right now. Now on this shape, now that we've got the nose or the snout area and the cheek area, we can then place the eyes onto the head. It all depends on how high you want the eyes to go. Also depends on the expression of the character's face. Have the eyes wrap up and around that form, so it's actually following the 3-dimensional form that's inside there. So it's as if this is the eyeball is rounded and it has a contour of its own. The eye on the opposite side, we're not going to see as much of it. Don't forget you're following your center line here, so the division of the eye, the side of the eye right here to the center line, and then from the center line to the opposite side is going to be even less, because again it's wrapping around that form of the head. So it's going to come up here like this. We're also considering the fact that we've got an ellipse that's up here. It's wrapping around this way, which will be the key point as to where the top of the eye comes in perspective. So that top of the eye will be over there. and then the eye line on the opposite side will come down and around like that. Now we can extend the top of the nose, the snout, up into this line here on the eye, wrapping that up and around there to complete the form and also create a feeling of flow in the character's head, so that this line continues right up here into the line on the side of the character's head, so it's the bridge of the nose now separating the eye. And once we've got that basic form on there, we can now draw the brows on, and extending this line down here, understanding where the edge of the cheek is, as if we're drawing a contour line now that comes down like this on the side of the head. We're going to draw this line up here. It's a good idea to show just a little bit of that area on the side of the eye. Okay, unless the character's eye is really bugging out, show just a little bit of that area there. It adds, again, some dimension and form to the character's face. Adding the brow onto this side here. So now I'm creating a series of invisible contours by drawing this line on, so that what the viewer sees is just a series of lines, but we're actually showing invisibles here as well. There are contour lines wrapping around the character's face here to create those contours on the brow. Same thing here. Now, those contours on the face are created by two lines specifically. This line right here on the bridge of the nose, and this line right here on the right hand side of the eye. You'll see how the lines are overlapping. We talked about this in the last class. You've got the one eye line is coming up like this, and the other one comes across this way and overlaps. I've exaggerated it there just for the sake of being able to see it. See if I can focus in on that a little bit better. So you've got this overlapping line here. When you see that, that indicates that this fold of skin here is wrapping up and around, so it creates a contour line that's going like that on the brow. Now in some cartoon characters on model sheets, you'll see that the two eyes, when they have the eyes opposing each other like we have ours, some artists will draw the eye with the line on the outside overlapping on that one like that. So it actually does the contrary. I'll exaggerate that a bit more. They have this line overlapping on the other one. What that does is that creates a contradictory contour line that comes around like this and makes the face look like the eyes have caved in and the eyes are actually pointing at each other like this. Now you can use those two lines depending on the expression. It's usually used for a sad expression, like when the character is worried or something like that. So you'll have the one line is like this and the other line would be like that, which would affect the brows to create that type of a worried look. I kind of discourage it because it looks awkward when you do something like that. So try and get the eyes to fold in this way. The pupils on the eyes, again, eye direction, making sure that it looks like the character is looking at something specific. In this case here, you can see how the one eye is blocked by the bridge of the nose, which creates a sense of dimension and overlap. And this one here, I've got it pretty much centered on the center contour line there. Now, the other thing about the eyes, I'm just going to draw a line across the bridge of the nose here so that we can have a differentiation in the coloring. The other thing about the eyes is that when you're dealing with a cartoon character, remember that the cranial mass is a solid mass that doesn't really have too much flex to it. There are key anchor points. The one key anchor point is right here on the cheeks, just below the eyes, on the cheek area here. This part of the face should remain constant, so that if your character is going to do a take, like in the Tex Avery cartoons, where, let me just put another sheet of paper on here and we'll try something that we can flip. If your character is going to do a take, you'll want that area right there to be your anchor point so that that's where the eyes expand off of. You don't want it to dip down into the cheek area. So if this character is going to do a take, I'm going to pop his eyes up like this. And keeping that point there firmly anchored on the face. So when we flip it, you can see that it's got a feeling of solidity to it. So you don't want to pop the bottom part, otherwise it'll look rather awkward and it'll look like it's digging down into the head. Now the next part that we have to be concerned with on our head is the jawline area. And once we've got the cranial mass figured out as to where it is, remember how we're working with the jaw, working on an elastic system. Well, we also have this area right here along the eye line, the cheek line, is our second anchor point for the jaw. So that if we have this character who's got a mouth that comes up like this, so that the jawline comes down and wraps in and around the bottom like that, we can now use that anchor point to stretch the character's face so that not only is the character's eyes moving up and down, but we can now take that, and from that anchor point there we can stretch the face or the head and the cheeks and pull this area here down like this so that we can open the character's mouth. That. We get a nice stretch on the character from that central key point on the head. Yeah, I know it's sort of mutating, isn't it?
Brian, where's that second anchor point?
The second anchor point is still along the cheeks. It's more along this side here, and it actually continues off the back of the head right here. So if this is the back of the character's head coming down like this, it'll connect into there, and that's one of the key anchor points for the cheek, is where it pulls down in that area there. So if I place that back over top, you'll be able to see on the back of the head there, okay, right here. That's the second key anchor point. Yeah, it does look a little bit like Ka the snake. If I was to just draw a line around here, that would put that those lines on there. That would give him the look of it. But if I put the snout on him, this is one of the things that you should start to be looking for in your studies of cartoons, is begin to look at cartoon characters that are on TV or in the theaters. Well, not in the theaters anymore, but that were in the theaters. Look for common traits that go through them. I mean, this could also be goofy if I really wanted it to be. If I just sort of put a lump on his nose right here, and then put the fold in his face right here, his cheek comes down like that, and then give him the 2 buck teeth. You can see how it's starting to turn into a goofy type character. Now by adding on the ears, if I give him the pointy ears, it turns back into the wolf again. So there are a lot of common traits, and this is what we were talking about last week with the basic shapes of the head. Once you've got a basic shape, you can mutate it any way you want, changing it just slightly and adding different types of features onto the character's face, and that'll create a completely different character.